based out of New Jersey and is a marketing company. Frank is skilled in the areas of brand and business development that drive operations management and process improvement. So with that in mind, Frank, go ahead and come up, and we'd love to hear a little bit about ROI.
All right, thank you, everybody. It's been an awesome day, right? It's been a great day about learning things. I've got about 3 pages of notes back there that I've taken. I've met some great new people here today. It's all about collaboration, right? But it's also all about getting the most out of our system. So a lot of those notes I'm going to go back and I'm going to take and I'm going to implement it into my system. And what's that about? That's about return on investment. Now, return on investment is this big thing. It's like the buzzword, but it really is our decision-making process. It's how we communicate. It can be something like today, showing up here today. What's the return on investment for showing up here today? It could be something like a movie we watched the other night. You know, how many times we watched a movie and said, that's not worth my 15 bucks. Or, I wish I could have those 2 hours back. So, return on investment is really our decision-making process. But in the business world, it can be so huge that it can become a bear. So what I'm going to talk about today is a real-world example where we broke down return on investment for our social bridge into one thing. One thing that, when I looked at it originally, I was like, it's not going to be that big of a deal. We're going to have to do a lot. We're going to have to, you know, all these different places. No. We focused on that one thing, and then we made it repeatable. And that's how we got our ROI on social bridge. So that's me when I actually wore that same outfit last night, if anybody saw me, so. I like it, brings out the blue in my eyes, but I was the Chief Operating Officer at Nardi, and I was in your seat last year as a Collabosphere attendee. And I learned so much about it, and when I went back, I was like, wow, this stuff's great, and so then I ended up here. But the interesting thing is that we were a printing company that was transforming into a marketing company. So when you talk about investing in ROI, none of us can just spend money freely. There's no money that's coming from any business that just has, hey, just make a mistake here, don't worry about it, make a mistake here, don't worry about it. But specifically when you're transforming a business, and we have that long-term vision, it's very, very important for us to not make those types of mistakes, to make sure that we're constantly looking at our ROI metrics. So what I want to talk about is the ROI of everything. I'm going to break it down to 101, so there's going to be a little bit of first-grade ROI stuff in here. But that's because I want to make a point about going back and not looking at this thing as a huge bear. We're going to look about finding a bottleneck. So we've all got bottlenecks in processes. We've talked about that today in some of the other presentations. And then a term in process improvement called exploiting the bottleneck. And then going after that win, because that's what we need. We need that win to improve out the system. So what exactly is ROI, return on investment? We all hear it a lot. It's gains minus cost divided by cost. That's the metric, but it really is that decision-making performance indicator. Measures profitability, measures efficiency, and it's the go-to, right? I mean, I had a CEO at Nardi would constantly walk in and say, hey, what's the ROI? What's the ROI on our social media? I said, well, we just started yesterday. What's the ROI on the couch in the lounge for the employees? I'm like, they like it. You know, so there's a lot of that, but it's, you know, it's how we measure success or failure. It's what did we receive for what we want to spend, the returns outweigh the cost, yada, yada, yada. Is the juice worth the squeeze? That's really what we're looking for here. You know what I mean? It's one of my favorite comments about ROI because it really brings me back to that center. It brings me back to that point where I think to myself, is this going to be worth our time, our effort, our resources, and all those things are huge about it. So in the business world, we're often experiencing this business ROI overload, and it becomes challenging in core business systems like Essential Desktop because it affects so many people. You've got people in multiple departments, you have multiple responsibilities, which creates this environment where everyone has a different agenda. You know, the admin may want to receive something or achieve something out of it, and then the users are trying to achieve something out of it, and then the creative team is trying to achieve something out of it, and it just, when you look at it that big, it becomes a big challenge to ROI the whole thing. And the admins and the people, like the people in this room, are trying to be the ones who justify the ROI. You experience that data overload. It's a little bit too much. The paradox of choice, right? We have so many choices, we don't make any. So here we go. So some of the best practices that we went after was, well, there's a mic here. Yeah. So some of the best practices we went after is have clear goals and intentions and refer to them constantly. So through the implementation process and through the beginning and as we're implementing Social Bridge, it's about why did we invest in Social Bridge in the first place. Write that down, meet on it, and continue to write that down and meet on it. Continue to make that the beginning of your conversations in your Social Bridge meetings. And then also, what was that one stress point or bottleneck that we were trying to fix? Write that down and keep coming back to that. Work with your engagement manager when you start the calls to sort of bring that, to keep that fresh. Focus on core processes that are old or outdated. So a lot of us have been doing what we do for a long time, and if we haven't, somebody has. So we have these processes that are 5 to 10 years old or longer. Paul was talking about it earlier about revisiting and revisiting. And so Kate as well. That's huge, because what happens in those processes is that the trainer approach to them starts to add layers and layers, and every time you do that, something gets missed. And that whole idea this morning about that Isaac put up about making something, getting an outdated process out of the way, or something that doesn't work out of the way once a month. All that stuff factors into process improvement. So focus on core processes that are old. That's where you're going to find your most value, because a lot of times they don't add value to the client. What we were noticing in some of our processes, which I'll get into, we were doing things over and duplicating them. So I would do something, and then someone else would do something, and we were all doing the same things. We didn't trust the process to get it done. So that's what starts to happen. You have these layers. None of that added value to the customer. None of that made anybody's life easier. And then focus on that quick win. What can we do to get buy-in from other teams? That's what's going to raise our adoption. That's what's going to get management and our clients to go, wow, this is something special. And then what's interesting about that is that it's often repeatable. And I'll come back to that as well. So specifically for our business, we're a printing company, marketing company, we're coming together, but we still have all this print work that we're trying to handle. We're doing it manually. So one of the things when we go back to clear goals and intention was, we had a goal to streamline the system for file and improve management. And if anybody's dealt with a commercial printer before, and we have a creative agency inside, we're sort of doing it all, right? It's all about getting that proof approved, and who approves it. And did you approve it, or did you approve it? And I signed off on it yesterday. Oh no, I made these changes. There's a lot of this going back and forth. If you use review and approve, you see how that can help. So when we were looking at some of our clients, the timeline was getting shorter and shorter and shorter for us to have these. And we had 5 to 10-year-old processes in there that were just antiquated. So we looked at that specifically. So our goal number 1 was to streamline this file and improve management process. Goal number 2, we were going to use workspaces to create client portals where we could, once we streamline this process, upload these proofs into them so any one of our clients could go in there and see exactly where their projects were at any time based on their proof status. And like I said, with the core outdated process, proofing through email. So file is too big for email, so 5 megabyte limit. We've all seen this. So we're trying to push these huge files in through the email system, and it just didn't work. We were batching them in 5s and then trying to keep up with that, sending 5 or 6 emails. Outdated file management, we had our CSRs and customer service reps using offline spreadsheets to track versioning. It was just really, really antiquated. Too many errors and omissions. So we'd have a client that would call up and say, hey, I've got these changes, here's the 10 changes I'm going to give you. And then that would get relayed to the next person, and that would get relayed to the next person, and it's whispered down the lane, and so the 10 changes turn into 7. And we'd always have to go back and make the extra 3. And we just created this and it also had limited accountability, so I didn't say to make that change. I'm sorry. I should have, it was never written down. The quick win was find a project that was affected by this the most. So here's the project. Casino monthly mailer, print production project. We had a very big casino client coming from southern New Jersey on the East Coast that does monthly mailers. And these monthly mailers are huge. They have all this, casino data is massive. 100,000 prints a month. But they had 26 plus versions. So every player in that casino got different promotions based on how much they play. Somebody who gambles and wins $10,000 a month, they get a completely different promotion than I would, who loses most of the time I go. So, yeah, it is terrible. But the cool part about it is this is a $30,000 a month project, and that's pretty big for us. The pros of it: high-profile client, great monthly revenue, hits multiple cost centers, so it was in our creative, it was in our print, it was in our mail, and there's more where that came from. This wasn't their only product. Maybe about 20 to 30 users a month. The cons: it's a highly competitive pricing model. In print, when you're buying paper and you're buying ink and you're buying mailing services, all that kind of stuff, that 30K gets eaten up really fast. So the profit margin has very, very tight, low profitability. So anything that we can do to increase our profitability, even if it's hours or minutes or days, is huge. Intense machine time, anything we can do to help out there is very huge. And we had a fixed timeline. They gave us 20 days every month. 20 days. We make it, we don't make it. Which created this higher time to get risk. If we didn't get proofs approved in time, we have to work with weekends to get it done. So here's a little bit of the layout. We had a mailer kickoff, estimating variables, job ticketing, intake artwork, and the cool part about this, or the cool part, but the interesting part about this job specifically and why we picked it, is the proof of approval process happened twice. We would approve all the artwork for 26 versions, and then they would say, okay, that's great, that's good, go to press. And then they would send us this massive spreadsheet of 100,000 people with all their information, and then we had to re-approve everything with all the mailing information on it. So it was 2 levels of proof approval of this job, which is why it was a great candidate for this. And then you have your standard print, cut, fold, merge data, and print, mail, there you go. Here's the 20 days broken down. 13 days for proof approval. And if anybody's ever dealt with a printer, they'll always say to you, hey, 13 days for proof approval, because that's the key. We can't do anything without proof approval. Once we have proof approval, we can do everything. But if you change the file, you can change we're stuck. So we had 13 days for proof approval, but there was all these kind of things happening. I'll get into that. So kickoff was 2 days, the review and approve was 5 days, print production 9, direct mail 4, breathing room 0. Absolutely nothing. If we made a mistake, if the client changed files, we were stuck. So we wanted to take a look at that 5 days. What was happening? And we talked about, Kevin did a great thing on the automated workflows with data and some of the triggering behaviors talked about in notifications. We had so many delays in just file actions. Client uploads file, nobody knows about it, no one gets a trigger. The CSR notices it 2 hours later, then it's 4:30, so she says, oh, I'll come in tomorrow and I'll give it to the creative team. The creative team comes in the next morning, she got tied up, it doesn't get there till 10:30, 11 o'clock. They start working on it, they go to lunch. Then they come back from lunch, and then it just starts all over again. They upload the files, and there's time delay, and then the CSR, she grabs it, and then she goes to send off the client, but it's too big for a file, so she's just piecing it together. She says, I'll take care of this tomorrow. So we had a lot of that, and that just goes right into the proofs too large for email. We had a sales rep that was a really cool guy who liked to drive a lot, and he would drive hard proofs like back out to the client because he's like, forget about all this technology, I'm just driving. And I said, great, I'll go with you, we'll go gamble. So it is 3 to 6 hours every time you go out there, and every time he'd come back with a new disc, and he'd say, oh, we got new files. But here's the funniest part, the best part about this, adding client value. What we didn't understand until I got into this process was what was going on in our client. So our client is sitting in their offices, and they get all these emails from us. They get 5 emails with 26 versions of proofs in it. And they start downloading these things and printing them out. And they're oversized. And they have the 8.5 letter printer. So now they're taping them together. And then they lay them out on a table. And then they grab 5 people from all different offices, legal, management, everything, and they get them in the room and they start looking everything over. They're like, this one works, that one works, marking this up, and it took hours. And then they would call us, someone would call us and say, here's all my changes, and sit there on the phone for another 40 minutes and communicating changes over the phone. And then the best part is when they did all that, someone in legal comes back from a meeting they just had, after a big meeting they just had, and says, we got to scrap all of it. That promotion So these kinds of things were happening constantly. And it's nobody's fault. It's part of what business is. I mean, legal's got to do their job, but the customer's got to do their job. We're doing our job. Everybody's trying to do this. And on the flip side of the customer situation, this isn't the only job they're holding on. They're handling those 20 others that I talked about earlier. So it's even more burdensome for them. So back to the goals. I say we bring up all the time, and we brought this into this this situation. We wanted to streamline the system for file-proof management. So we rebuilt the workflow, the entire workflow in Social Grade, using automated notifications, automated proof creation. So that same process I just described to you, file gets uploaded, everybody gets triggered. The CSR gets triggered, the creative team, the pre-press team, the production manager, they know. So now the production manager is preparing everything, they're ordering paper, they're doing what they need to do, we got files, we can move. The creative team is working on the files to get them ready. And by the time the job jacket and the ticketing comes through, they've already got the files ready for proof. So that whole process is sped up by hours and hours a day. We created a file status workflow, so when you're trying to manage 26 proofs at a time, we know proof A, proof C, proof D are all approved, we can rip those and go to press. Just get them out of there and go to press. Before that, we had spreadsheets trying to coordinate a lot, and it was very difficult because we never got that yes, like you get with proof, that approve button hits, we can move. Before it was like, I get this email, this all looks kind of good. So that was a great thing. The second was to create a proof portal for our clients. We built, gave clients a custom branded portal. This was just for one client that we did for the casino for this one job. We gave them a proof portal, branded it for them. It was basically a workspace that we just connected to, dropped our files in, review and approve, create a markup tool so they didn't need to print out for the meeting, and then allow them to keep much better track of their own process. So not only are we improving on our side, but they're improving on their side. So now there's more room. If we only have 20 days and we're talking, oh man, we're tight on that 20 days, they're not going to give us anything else to do. They're just going to say, that's it for you guys. So here's where the rubber met the road. Value added to part of the rubber met the road. We've got some more rubber coming later. But where the value added to the client, more flexibility to make changes. So all the changes that they needed to make, the 20, 30 changes they need to make on all those versions, they had more flexibility. If they needed to call us and say, hey, we need to make these complex changes, they got done, that we didn't get missed. We minimized those errors and omissions. So that was huge, because that's a big time there. Version control. So everybody knew which versions were approved, and if there was a problem with a version, we knew which version to change. Eliminated overtime and weekend expenses. So because we were hitting our targets, we didn't have to have those extra overtime days. Less stress and worry. Sometimes the biggest ROI is really just how everybody feels throughout the process. It's not something that you can completely tangible say there's a dollar value to it, but there's something that says, everybody feels more comfortable in that pull your hair out, fire, putting out fire feeling is gone. So now we can really focus on doing the work we're doing. And again, this wasn't their only project, so that created opportunity for more. That 15% is 3 days. So we added 3 days to the process by cutting down proof review from, I think it was 35% to 20%. But here's the other rubber meeting the road that I was talking about. Here's the actual dollars and cents to it. So we had a CSR, customer service rep, doing all the proofing and working with the client. She was spending about 4 hours, 3 days that she ended up saving, which is $144 a year. Time which she makes is about $5,000 almost. Production overtime, you start adding this stuff up, it just gets exorbitant. 16 hours every month. So every month we had 2 people coming in on Saturday. It was just one shift, but it was 2 people. Then you have your pre-press, which they were saving about, when we did a couple months testing on this, they were saving about a half-hour version with just not having to go back and open up files. Oh, I forgot these changes, can you run all of these files out? Oh, I remake the PDF because it's not fitting into the email. Can you downsize this? All the little things that happen to try and push it through that little bandwidth of email. 15,492, this one specific project was for our social page. And when I saw that number, I was blown away. Because here I am thinking I'm going to go back to our CEO and I'm going to tell him, hey, we got ROI in all these departments to justify our system. And really fixing that one thing, that one huge bottleneck, we old process, we were able to ROI our entire system. Now let's say some of you have bigger systems than we do. Granted. But the best part about this is that we have 350 clients. So this process is completely repeatable. And what we did immediately after we saw these numbers was we got our number 1 and number 2 customer on the system as client portals. The importance of a quick win like that, you get buy-in from top to bottom, and you also get buy-in from left to right with your customers. Your customers go, wow, this makes my life easier. So all of a sudden, the system is now even more important, just as important to them. If you can look at our system numbers, we have our customers, our top 2 customers are logging in as much as our team is. Offer proof that you're moving forward. A lot of times with big systems like this, big ships turn slow, so you're trying to fix all these areas, and you may feel like, wow, I'm not getting anywhere, These wins can really make you feel like that. It can give you some breathing room. That process cleanup can really make a big difference. They can seem small and turn out big. They're often repeatable. And it really helps the 2 things we've been talking about today is people and process, and help you achieve that end vision for what you're looking for in the system. Just a quick note on people and process for what to look for. With process, you always want to focus on customer value. If it's not giving value to the customer, it's not important. You've got to automate it or standardize it or get rid of it. Value stream, that's process flow and value stream. Control variables as much as you can. Look for bottlenecks, create scalability and repeatability. And with people, we talked a lot about today, some great points about user adoption and some of the great things you guys are doing. And it's everything that I'm hearing is you're asking them what's holding them back, and you're getting that feedback. And I heard that today with your presentation and some of the other presentations where we're talking about great user adoption. That's fantastic because at the end of the day, all they're really thinking about is what's in it for me. If I can make my life easier, I'll do it. We talked about creatives, having challenges in systems like this, saying, oh, I don't want to do it, but because they're not typically process people, right? But sometimes it's about making their lives easier. It also connects roles and eliminates silos so that information's in one location. So it wasn't in the customer service or in creative or at the client. Everybody knew where it is and how it is, so our production team knew what to do. So even when things are we call it, they go dark, right? The client goes dark, we don't know where they are, they're still sort of proofing stuff, we haven't heard back from them in a couple hours or a couple days. Because they're in our system and they're moving around, we can see that they're approving things. We can see that they're making comments on the discussions. So our production team knows, hey, they're pretty much close to approving this thing tomorrow. I better plan some time. And that goes back to some of the change management and getting people out of their comfort zone that we talked about here today. One of the best quotes that I've ever heard that I use all the time when I'm trying to improve a process or get people to buy into ROI or put it together is if you need a new process and don't install it, you pay for it without it. And it's so powerful for me because that whole time, we probably worked on this, we won that account a good year earlier. So that whole first year, we were spending all that $15,000. We didn't see it, but we were spending that every month. You times that by 12, or sorry, we were spending that every year. Yeah, you times that by 2 years, and that's 30 grand. That's huge. These things, and then you times that by 300 customers. What does that equal out to? So it just becomes this. It just goes back to this. If you don't have a process and don't install it, you may not see that you're spending that money, but it's there. And I was going to wear this today, but because I had those glasses and I had this outfit, but clear best practice is have clear goals and focus on them and keep those in front of you. 2 to 3 to 4 months after your implementation, go back to those goals because it will remind you why you got the system. I think it'll be very helpful. And look for repeatable wins in your own processes. How to learn more, schedule time for your engagement team. Schedule time to engage a team, your account manager, your support team. I think they totally help you out with trying to look for some of these solutions, and definitely help sorting out opportunities for ROI. that's the fun part. If you've ever been in a process improvement environment or had the opportunity to do it, it's the whiteboarding of it. One of the things that we did in value stream mapping is there's a process where you literally get a whiteboard, you get everybody in the room, and you just draw it out. And what's cool about drawing it out is everybody draws their part. You say, well, I do this, and you do this, and then you realize, you start to see the layers come down, and you're like, well, wait a minute, I'm doing this, and you're doing this. We're both doing the same thing. And they'll say, well, I need to do that. And you're like, well, what if you didn't need to do that? Well, I'd save an hour a day, or 2 hours a week, and then you start to see that start